Hello, so good afternoon to everyone. Hello,
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, sir.
yeah, good afternoon. So anybody wish to ask any question regarding the previous class? Okay, so in the previous class, we were in detail discussing about what is the necessity of soil exploration. But when you talk about soil exploration, so what is the fundamental meaning of the soil exploration or soil investigation, and how to accomplish the task? When we talk about soil investigation, so one or two important things that you need to keep it in your mind. So this soil investigation can be done over a small area, especially of a residential buildings, or over a large area. So if infrastructure development is taking place. For example, if you take a residential building, so it will be constructed over a small area. But if you take an example of a flyover, so the construction will be spread in a linear direction, so over a couple of hundreds of meter, while the width is small. So therefore, you cannot follow an identical way of soil investigation. So for residential building or for an infrastructure project. So it should be done based on the type of the infrastructure project and the importance of the structure also. So among the residential buildings, so it may be a simple G+1 or confined to only ground floor, or you may propose to build a skyscraper, so which comprises of more than 50 stories or 60 stories. So this gives an idea that the kind of soil investigation may not also remain same for every kind of a building. So that means it should depend on the importance of the infrastructure project. So there are several variety of ways of doing the soil investigation. A few of them are listed here. So they can broadly be categorized into two things, a destructive method and non-destructive method. So destructive method
Sir,
means, yeah,
sir, are you sharing anything, sir?
oh,
I cannot see anything.
are you able to see the slide now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. So these are the list of different soil investigation methods. So they can broadly be categorized into destructive methods or non-destructive methods. Or sometimes we may adopt a technique which doesn't require excavation of the soil, or often we may have to make a borehole, or often the investigation may be confined to the shallow depth, or often we may have to go for deeper depths. So shallow depth means let us say below 5 meter, or deeper depths means even below 5 meter up to 30 or 40 or 50 meter, whatever it is. So depending upon the kind of soil investigation techniques, we can say destructive methods. A simple example is a trial pit or a test pit. Non-destructive method, which are predominantly done by putting all the equipment on the surface. For example, ground penetration radar or seismic survey or electromagnetic survey, so on and so forth. There are other methods wherein one can able to collect the soil sample from different depths. because collection of the soil sample is also one of the critical steps in soil investigation. So for that purpose, we can use SPT, that is standard penetration test. While there are other penetration tests, for example, CPT cone penetration test, DCPT dynamic cone penetration test, SCPT static cone penetration test. So here a probe is driven into the ground and the response of the soil is measured in different form. So here no soil sample is collected. So accordingly, so the methods have been classified. So direct method, destructive method where soil sample is disturbed. Example is trial pit. Non-destructive methods. Examples are ground penetration radar, seismic survey, electromagnetic. If your intent to collect the soil sample, then you must conduct the SPT test. Or if you want to find out the response of the soil sample without sample collection, then you must carry out CPT or DCPT or SCPT. So let us try to understand how these methods are executed in the field. So one of the simplest thing is simply make a small hole to the ground, that is called as a trial pit. Trial pit means making a small, digging out a small amount of the soil sample. So this has some constraint. So we cannot go not more than 1 to 2 meter width and 2 to 4 meter depth. So that is the limitation of the trial pit. And here we simply dig out the soil sample. So therefore it is called as a disturbed soil sample. Then if you want a little more deeper, then we can go for the augering, or if you want further deeper, then we can go for the drill rig. So if your investigation is remain confined to the shallow depth, we can go for the trial pit. If you want little deeper depth, say for example 4 to 6 meter, then we can go for augering. And if you want a larger deeper depth, then we can go for the borehole. So we can also see the comparison sizes. Trial pit, the width is 1 to 2 meter. Augering, so the width is again couple of millimeters like a borehole. So whose diameter is 75 millimeter, but we can go up to 150 millimeter, even higher also. So we can go deeper depths, say 10 meter or 30 meter. So when you plan to collect the soil sample, so the soil sample collection can be done using a specific equipments. Those are called as a split spoon samplers or shell bite tubes. But try to understand how to collect the soil sample. Okay, first, in what kind of the soil one can able to collect the soil sample. So suppose people may ask you, if I do the soil investigation in purely dry sandy soil, so it is a bit difficult to collect the soil sample unless you have a specific mechanism. But in case of the clay, so it is immaterial whatever the depth of investigation you are doing it. But when you use either shell bite tube or split spoon sampler, you can able to collect the soil sample. While here also shown a distinction between trial pit and the borehole. In case of the borehole, uh, there is a possibility of collecting the soil sample in its undisturbed form. While in the trial pit, such a possibility is minimum. So because we have to simply dig out the soil sample, what we collect is only disturbed soil sample. That means all particles are pulverized. While in case of the undisturbed soil, so a core of the soil sample as shown here, small core of the soil sample is retrieved from the below ground surface. Then once the soil sample is collected, what
Sir,
you do with it?
sir,
Yeah,
so you said we collect only destable soils, or what word did you use?
undisturbed and disturbed soil sample.
Okay, okay, sir.
Okay, disturbed means suppose say on the surface you are simply digging out the soil. So every particle is individual. You see some kind of the pulverized nature. That is called as a disturbed soil sample. But suppose if you dig out a core from the soil directly, okay, using some device, then that is called as a undisturbed soil sample.
Okay, sir.
Okay, good. So once you retrieve or extract a soil sample from the ground, then what is the next step? So here comes is your knowledge of soil mechanics laboratory. So where you learned that the soil sample can be subjected to various tests, which includes particle size distribution, specific gravity, index properties, shear strength properties, consolidation properties, so on and so forth. So the samples which have been collected from location to location are, so in a single borehole from different depths. Say from a single borehole, say for example a borehole is made for a depth of 10 meter. Then we can able to collect the soil sample, say for example every 2 meter, 2 meter, 4 meter, 6 meter, 8 meter, 10 meter. Means from a single borehole of 10 meter depth, we can able to collect 5 or 6 soil sample. While this is at a single location. So then what about an area? Such a number of such boreholes shall be made at different locations. So therefore, we will be having so many number of samples from a particular area. And all these soil samples will be transported to the laboratory and subjected to the various kinds of the soil mechanics test, and their properties are determined. And based on the obtained properties, so what we do is we do some kind of the soil profiling, meaning thereby, suppose if you are encountering a clay or sand or silt or gravel or any kind of the soil combination thereof, you need to identify what is the thickness of such a soil layer and what kind of the soil it is. So this is the first and foremost step. So when you deal with any design, because why do you need to understand the soil thickness? Because this is the thickness of the soil that will be subjected to the superstructure load. And why should we understand about the soil identification? Because a particular soil can show engineering properties. For example, in sand, the permeability is high. In clay, the permeability is low. While in sand, there is no consolidation settlements. But in clay, so there is a possibility of consolidation settlement. Okay, so to have a detailed understanding about all these engineering aspects, it is essential to identify what type of the soil it is and how far it is extended in a depth wise as well as in a width wise. Both these things are important. And another important parameter is what is the location of groundwater table. Because in your soil mechanics, you have read about a chapter called as a stress, total stress, effective stress, pore water pressure. So all these stresses are a function of water table. If there is no water, effective stress prevails. But if there is a water, then total effective stress both gets prevails. Both are getting prevailed. So therefore, you need to understand what kind of the stresses the soil will subject depending upon the change in water table. So this is pictures of a trial pits, as you can see. So these are made for a shallow depth. So width is say 1 or 2 meters, depth is 3 or 4 meters. You can see a person is inside a trial pit. Now we can clearly see from this picture. So for example, if you closely look at this picture, you can see the profile of the soil in the vertical direction. Profile of the soil in the vertical direction. See, you can see. So there is some concrete layer. Then there is another layer of the soil. There is another stabilized soil. Then there is another stabilized soil, and there is another stabilized soil with gravelly material, and another stabilized layer. Then there is a natural soil. Okay, so this is called as a soil profiling. So here you can see different soil layers having different thicknesses. So this is foremost important because these are the layers which are going to bear the superstructure load. Okay, so for that purpose, we need to profile the soil. So here you can see layer, the soil layer and its respective thickness. So the same thing will be done. So from the borehole or from the CPT or from the SPT, whatever the soil investigation you do it, the ultimate purpose of any soil investigation is to profile the soil, which delineates the information like what is the thickness of each and every soil layer and what kind of the behavior it exhibits. So you can also see when you compare the middle pictures with the right side picture. So this soil is entirely different than this soil. So from the color, this is a black in color, and from the appearance, we can understand that this is a clayey type of soil. But if you look at this one, this is not a clayey type of the soil. This is something mixed with predominantly gravel composition, where the particle size is more than 4 millimeter. Suppose if your depth of requirement is more, say you have to go for more than 3 meter or more than 5 meter or more than 10 meter, then you cannot able to achieve that by trial pits. Then what you need to do is go for the boring. So there are variety of techniques available for advancing a borehole into the ground. You can say there are auger boring, there is a wash boring, there is a percussion drilling, there is a rotary drilling. Now, why there are different varieties of the boring techniques? The reason is, just imagine you are doing a boring on the ground surface. Now, this may be extended into the soil, may be extended into the rock, but uh, the kind of the technique so that is used or valid for a soil may not be valid for a rock mass. So therefore, you need to have a altogether different technique for soil and different technique for rock. So in such a sense, the people have developed so different techniques. For example, auger boring, fast boring, percussion drilling, and rotary drilling, so on and so forth. So if you look at carefully, the percussion drilling and rotary drilling are useful for making or advancing a borehole in rocks. So while wash boring is in particular useful for soil, and auger boring also in particular useful for soil. So these are different varieties of the augers. So the left side 3 augers are hand augers, while the right side one is a motor auger or powered auger. So wherever trial fit fails or wherever you just want only some soil sample to be collected, then you can go for augering. So here the auger is driven by rotating in either clockwise or anti-clockwise direction. So the whatever the soil that is grabbed between these helical augers, so that is scooped out and send it to the laboratory. So in between these helical augers, when you drive, the soil gets grabbed. So this soil will be retrieved when you pulling out the auger, and that soil will be collected, sealed, packed, and sent it to the laboratory. But only small amount of the soil is collected when you go for the augering. We can't able to collect big sample. So in case of this one, so this is the volume which will be able to collect the soil sample, and it can be rotated either in clockwise or in anti-clockwise direction. So next is wash boring. So this is a schematic of a wash boring. So wash boring means we use jet of water as a technique for advancing the borehole. So there is also a rotary driller. So if you look at the cross section of this one, so this is a tripod which anchors the drill rod. So this is a drill rod, and this is a drill bit. So that is called as a chopping bit, as you can see. And on either side of the chopping bit, so there is a hollow portion which allows flow of water from bottom to the ground surface or ground to the bottom. So here the simple technique I will explain. So this is schematic diagram. So this is a picture of washboarding also. Here what they do is, first they will insert the chopping bit into the ground by rotation simultaneously. So when you rotate, so the chopping bit chops or loosens the soil mass, and this loosened soil comes out. But here, in order to take out the soil mass, what they do is they also flush in the water into the borehole through the chop bit, meaning thereby the action of the water is coupled with the rotation of the chopping bit. So the combined action loosens the soil, and since there is a continuous circulation of water, so this circulation of water lifts the loosened soil particles, and that loosened soil particle is collected in the settling tank. Now, when you collect the or when you bring out the soil sample, so this is some kind of a slurry, and that slurry is collected in the settling tank. So once this slurry is settled in the settling tank, so we can extract the soil sample from that settling tank. Okay, when you allow for some time, we can see all soil particles are settled at the bottom and only water floats at the top, and that water can further be used for recirculation. So this is the whole concept of washboarding. So there are pros and cons of this washboarding. Advantage is this technique is useful only for advancing the borehole, but we couldn't able to obtain soil sample in its undisturbed state. What we get is only the slurry settled particles. Slurry settled particles. But this technique can be integrated with another technique, that is a standard penetration test. So that I will explain in the subsequent slides. So therefore, in that case, washboarding shall be used as borehole advanced connection. So uh, the disadvantage is what we get is undisturbed soil sample, that too, so we don't know what kind of the state it is also, and it is also very difficult to identify what is the thickness of the soil sample, because we don't know everything, all the soil particles which got loosened when chopping bit is rotating. So change in color of the soil, we can say there is a change in the soil layer. If there is no change, means we can't able to identify what kind of the soil it is. That is the biggest limitation. These are the pictures of washboarding. So as you can see, so these are some pros and cons of this method. So the soil particles collected represent a very disturbed sample, and it is not very useful for evaluation of the engineering properties. So this soil sample cannot be taken to the laboratory, and on it we can able to conduct a variety of tests. That is, there is no such possibility. So washboardings, and therefore washboardings are primarily used for advancing the boreholes. So whenever a soil sample is required, the chopping bit is to be replaced by the soil sampler. So here soil sampler means, so let me show you the soil samplers. So these are the soil sampler. One is split spoon soil sampler, another one is shell by soil sampler. So once using the washboarding technique, you advance the borehole, say up to a depth of 2 meter or 3 meter, then insert either cell by tube or split spoon sampler. So drive it and collect the soil sample. So then the change of rate of progress and change of color of wash water indicates changes in the soil strata. This is only the identification, which otherwise there is no major advantage with the washboard. Then there is another technique. So for advancing the borehole is rotary drilling. So these are the rotary drill bits. These are also called as a diamond drill bits. There are several variety of diamond drill bits are available in the market. So this kind of rotary drilling is essentially used in case of the rocks or where the soil is very hard, where wash boring fails to loosen the soil sample. Because for example, if you look at the sand is mixed with the gravelly material, so the chop bit of wash boring cannot able to loosen that particular soil sample because because the gravels are so bigger in size, so they won't even come up with the water. So in such case we go for the rotary drilling, or the next one is percussion drilling. So here also same thing. So the rock or the soil is chopped into the small particles, and by circulating or flushing in the water, so these chopped soil particles or the rock particles are brought to the ground surface, and there they are there in the mud pit, they are allowed to settle, and those settled particles are collected and used for just identification of the soil type. The next one is the percussion drilling. So here a heavy drill bit called as a churn bit, so is used for advancing the borehole. So the percussion drilling can be used for any kind of the soil. So these are the percussion drill bits. These are called as a churn bits, and this is the entire schematic of the arrangement of the percussion drilling. So this is percussion. So that's all about the drilling techniques. So we have a little idea about 4 ways of advancing the borehole. So suppose if you want for shallow depth, so then we can go for trial pit, and if you want little more, then we can go for auger boring or augering, and if you want any deeper depth, then we should go for the drilling. So among the drilling, we have seen the 4 varieties of drilling. The first one is wash boring, the second one is rotary drilling, and the third one is percussion drilling. So depending upon the soil type, so that you are dealing with either sand or clay or gravelly sand or any soil that is in mix with the gravel materials or rock. So depending
Sir,
upon the, yeah.
sir, but we don't know now what's inside that. We know only about the top layer or only about 1 to 2 meters. How we'll know what is inside that?
Oh, okay. So say for example, from the ground surface, you feel that it is a soil. Now say for example, you are using the wash boring. Now say at 1 meter depth, it is a rock. Now it is obvious that when you do the wash boring, either your drill bit breaks or you can't able to advance the borehole. So indicates that stronger layer exists at a depth of 1 meter. Then next thing you need to try is what it is. Either you go for a rotary drilling or percussion drilling. Okay, so that's how you have to identify. Otherwise, there is no
Okay.
other way. Or alternatively, before you are going for the exploration technique, what we can do is we can go for geophysical investigation. There, what we do is we take an equipment like ground penetration radar, and we impinge electromagnetic waves into the soil mass up to a certain depth. So that is depending upon the wavelength of electromagnetic waves. So we can go up to 10, that wavelength can penetrate up to a depth of 10 meter or 50 meter or 100 meter, doesn't matter, depending upon the wavelength of electromagnetic. So, but these electromagnetic waves have a sensitivity to the soil type and groundwater. So wherever there is a change in the profile, so there is a reflection of this electromagnetic wave. So that reflections are used for calculation of the soil depth. So thereby we can means preliminarily understand what is the depth of the topmost layer, followed by the second layer, followed by the third layer. So that is indirect way of establishing the soil profile. Okay. So now, having understood a little bit about the soil exploration by drilling methods, Now, how many number of boreholes should I make it? It's a big question. And how far? That is depth. Okay, if you take a small area, suppose 10 meter by 10 meter. So how many number of boreholes should I make it? Shall I go for only one? Shall I go for one in each corner? Or shall I go for only one at the middle? Or shall I accompany drilling with trial pit? So on and so forth. So all these are basic questions. So that will arise in your mind. So but there should be some kind of a proper guidelines. So in deciding how many number of boreholes, how many number of trial pits, how far we should go, and what should be the extent in the horizontal direction, so on and so forth. So for that we can see there are two important things. One is uh, the spacing of the boring and the depth of the boring. Spacing of the boring and the depth of the boring. So let me tell you the depth of the boring. Now, in the last lecture, we understood about one particular thing, that is the pressure bulb. The pressure bulb. The top of the pressure bulb indicates maximum stress and the bottom of the pressure bulb indicates the least stress. That means up to the bottom of the pressure bulb, the stress of the superstructure is reaching or getting dispersed. Meaning thereby, I can go for my depth of boring until such depth where my pressure bulb is becoming terminated or little more deeper. So that's how I should decide the depth of the boring. Then how shall I decide the spacing of the boring? So for spacing there are some guidelines, so that we will discuss. Even for depth also there are some guidelines. So regarding the spacing, say for example I have taken a small area of 100 meter by 120 meter. Suppose if I make one borehole at each corner, then is it enough to get the profile of the soil? So that we have to think of. Okay. Or suppose if I make so many number of boreholes at different locations. So in the first case, it may not be giving the whole profile of the soil in the lateral extent. But in this diagram, suppose if you make so many number of boreholes, yes, we are getting the perfect soil profile in almost width direction as well as in the length direction. But the possible consequence is that how much would be the cost of doing such a many number of boreholes, and who is going to bear? No client is going to spend this much amount of money for profiling only the soil. So that means cost is the constraint in deciding the spacing and number of boreholes. Then what would be the ideal? So the ideal is make a one borehole. So one at each corner, one at the edge. So then followed by the trail pits. So this seems to be quite alright, optimistic, or very optimal number of trail pits and optimal number of boreholes, which will possibly give you so the profile of the entire area of 100 meter by 120 meter. So this is how in an engineering way you should decide the number of boreholes. So suppose if you take another profile where it is not rectangle, rather in different area. So this is how one can able to decide the selection of the borehole location. You can see all the red dots indicate the borehole location. Or sometimes these conditions may defy the decision of the location of the boreholes. Sometimes we may have to go for even more number. That depends upon the type and size of the project, budget allocated for site investigation, and the soil variability. So the last parameter is most important, that is soil variability. If there is more variability in the soil profile, meaning thereby more number of boreholes are required. It is imminent, so there is no other choice. Suppose if there is a whole homogeneity in the soil mass, then you can drastically reduce the number of boreholes also. That is also a possibility. Then how deep? So we have to go for soil exploration. So as I explained, so if you look at the pressure bulb where the stresses are becoming zero, that should be a limit for depth of exploration. So regarding the spacing, so these are some guidelines given by Indian Standard Code. So as I told you, the decision is governed by the importance of the structure also. So for example, if you take highway, then the spacing of the boring should be a linear length of 300 to 600 meter. That means for every 300 or 600 meter, we can make a one borehole. Now, in geotechnical engineering, we hardly speak about a specific value. Rather, we always talk about a range. Say, for example, here 300 to 600 meter range. Why should we have a range? This depends upon the variability of the soil. If there is a high variability, then we should go for the closer spacing. If there is a more uniformity in the soil, then we can go for longer spacing of 600 meter. And let us also compare between importance of the structure. For example, earth dam and highway. Though both of them are governed by the linear geometry, but in case of the earth dam, we are following very close spacing of 30 to 60 meter only. But in the road, we are following 300 to 600 meter. Such is the importance of the structure. So earth dam is more important than the highway. So highway is spread over hundreds of kilometers, but earth dam it is predominantly used for storing of a water. There is a huge amount of hydrostatic load on earth dam, and second thing is its length is definite. It's not an indefinite. So therefore, the spacing should be as close as possible. In the highway, we can able to take a chance of risk, but in the earth dam, there is no such a kind of risk is permitted, because once dam is failed means there are any other possibility. There could be casualties, there could be damage to the property, loss of life, and to the economy, and to the living beings also. Okay, animals. So we are also often hearing flooding of villages, so on and so forth. So keeping these things in mind, so we have to give utmost importance to the earth dam. Then for barofits, 30 to 120 meter, multi-story building, 15 to 30 meter, single story factories, 30 to 90 meter. So, but these are only can serve as a guideline. You may be sticking to it or you may not be sticking to it. So that again, the judgment comes depending upon your visualization of the soil when you are on the field. So some specifications about the spacing of the boring by Indian Standard Code 1892/1979. So you can refer to all these guidelines. So then depth of the borehole. So some guidelines, like for example, the depth of the exploration depends on the type of the proposed structure, its total weight, the size, shape, and disposition of the loaded area, soil profile, and the physical properties of the soil that constitutes each individual stratum. So a lot of parameters affect the depth of the exploration. Normally, it should be done 1.5 times the width of the footing below the foundation. So just to give the demonstration, for example, say this is the footing. So this is the footing. So the depth of the exploration, and this is the width of the footing. This is the width of the footing. So what he is saying is the depth of the exploration should be 1.5 times the width of the footing. See, if this is the width of the footing, your depth of exploration is something like this. It is 1.5 times of B. So
Sir,
this
what is
is
meant by foundation level?
foundation level. Yeah, foundation level means uh, the ground surface. There are two terminology. One is footing level and foundation level. So let me not get confused. Foundation level means from the ground surface. Okay, and another important factor is, suppose if a number of loaded areas in a close proximity, suppose one footing is right adjacent to the another footing. If you are not allowing enough space, that means there is a possibility of overlap of the stress. Let me show it here. So say this is a footing. If you look at the load distribution, so this is the load distribution of one footing, and this is the load distribution of the another footing. So if you compare this area under stress and this area under stress, say this is designated as 1 and this is designated as 2, the area located at 2 is under stress by both the footings. Okay, but 1 is under only one footing stress. So that means you need to go for more depth of exploration at location 2 and less depth of exploration at 1. So such may be one of the possibility. Okay, because here, because of this overlap, now your width from B, it will become the whole width as a B. Earlier, B means only width of one footing, but if the footings are closely spaced, you can consider the combination of 1 and 2 as the entire width of the single footing. So these are some guidelines given by the IS 1892 regarding the depth of the boring. So isolated spread footing, so 1.5 times the width. And here also they have given the guidelines. For example, isolated spread footing or raft or footing with clear spacing equal or greater than 4 times the width. Then we can go for 1.5 times. So suppose if the closer spacing is less than twice the width, then you go for 1.5 times the length, not the width. Then adjacent rows of footing with a clear spacing between rows less than twice the width, 4.5 times the width. With a clear spacing between rows greater than twice the width, then 3 times the width. So this is for footings and this is for the pile foundation. 1.5 times the width of the structure from bearing level, that is toe of pile or bottom of well. So for example, let me also show you here. Say this is the ground surface and this is the pile that you have inserted into the ground. So this is the ground surface. So what the meaning is, the toe of the pile is, this is the toe of the pile. So from here 1.5 times the width of the footing, the width of the structure. Okay, so that's what is the meaning of 1.5 times the width of the structure from the bearing level. For roads and cuts, equal to the bottom width of the cut. Then fills 2 meter below the ground level are equal to the height of the fill, whichever is greater.
Sir, how to determine the length and width of the footing, sir? Here, somewhere it is used width, and in one case it is using length.
Suppose, say, as I told in the, okay, let me give, say, adjacent footing with a clear spacing less than twice the width. Say for example, this is one footing, and say this is another footing, this is one other footing. So at least B is the width of the isolated footing. Okay, now what is the clear spacing between two footings? So this is the clear spacing between two footings. This is the clear spacing. So if this clear spacing is less than twice the width, if S is less than 2 times the B, then 1.5 times the total length, 1.5 times the length of the footing. So if this is the B, the length is the other side of the footing. Okay, so this is the length. So here depth of exploration should be 1.5 times the length, which otherwise it is 1.5 times the width of the footing. Is it clear now?
Yes, sir.
So another important point is soil sampling. So how to collect the soil sampling? Now, when we talk about soil sampling, so if it is from the right on the ground surface, it is quite easy to collect the soil sample. But for example, if you want a soil sample from a depth of 20 meter, how that is possible? So first of all, if my aim is to get the soil sample from a depth of 20 meter, first thing is that I need to make a borehole up to a depth of 20 meter, then insert another device which could able to grab the soil sample and bring it to the ground surface. So there are several varieties of the soil sample. So the very simplistic is this is very rudimentary, where it can be done only on the ground surface, where excavate a small thing, insert some kind of the open-ended cylindrical box, but this is strictly confined to only the ground surface, especially uh,
Tiger, third again. Wala na. Bago na.
okay.
ऐसे ही
So
कोई
another, yeah, please mute yourself. So one of the rudimentary way of collecting the soil sample is directly from the ground surface. So from the ground surface, we can collect both disturbed sample or undisturbed sample. So if you want disturbed sample, simply excavate and take out the soil sample. So if you want undisturbed soil sample from the ground surface, so it's very simple. You take out any cylindrical box, insert into it and grab it such that you cut the soil sample at the bottom of the cylindrical box after the insertion. So this can be done. So first you insert the open-ended cylindrical box into the soil mass, remove the all surrounding soil sample except at the bottom, and insert some kind of the spatula or shovel at the bottom and lift it up. That's it. It's very simple way of conducting the undisturbed soil sample. But the biggest limitation of this technique is we can collect only from the top exposed surface. Suppose if somebody is asking to collect such a kind of the soil sample from a depth of 0.5 meter, so it is not possible, or 1 meter, so it is not possible. So therefore, what is the alternative? So then we have to go for use of some kind of the samplers. So those samplers are called as a split spoon sampler. So this is the schematic and picture of a split spoon sampler. So here you can see the internal diameter of the split spoon sampler is approximately 50 millimeter. So this is how it looks like. So one of its edges at the bottom is sharpened so that because of this sharp edge, it will be driven into the soil mass. And you can see this as a halo inside of it. And when you drive this sampler into the ground, so all the soil sample will be collected inside this halo portion. So there are different geometries of the split spoon sampler. The moment you drive it, depending upon the length inside the split spoon sampler, you can collect such amount of the soil sample. For example, here you can see there are three portions to it. The top one is 150 and middle is 450 millimeter and the bottom one is 75 millimeter. So when you drive it, it is obvious that the topmost portion of the soil can get disturbed and the bottommost portion of the soil can get disturbed. So we can discard the bottom one and the top one, and we can collect the middle portion of the soil sample for testing purpose. Here split means the sampler is divided into two halves, and you can see the hollow portion inside. When you drive, all the soil sample is grabbed inside into it. Then another sampler kind is thin walled sampler. So here you can see. So this is the picture of the thin walled sampler. You can also, for better understanding, I am showing the picture again. Here, in case of the split spoon sampler, the wall thickness of the sampler is so high. So more is the wall thickness, more is the disturbance to the soil sample. So wherever or whenever you want as less disturbance to the soil sample as possible, then you should go for thin walled sampler. Here the thickness of the tube is so small, it causes minimum damage or disturbance to the soil sample. So here also inside is hollow portion. The moment you drive using any other technique, so this thin walled sampler into the soil mass, the soil is grabbed inside into the hollow stem, and that will be retrieved, packed, sealed and transported to the laboratory. Okay, so these are the two variety of the samplers that are predominantly used for soil sample collection. Now one particular thing so that was discussing is because of the wall thickness, there is some kind of disturbance to the soil sample. So if it is too much of disturbance, then we should say or state that sample as a disturbed sample. But there should be some kind of criterion to decide whether the collected soil sample is a disturbed sample or undisturbed sample. So for that purpose, people have recommended different equations. As you can see, one is area ratio, next is inside clearance, next is outside clearance. So depending upon the values of these ratios, we can say whether the collected soil sample is disturbed sample or undisturbed sample. So as you can see here, if AR, that is area ratio, which is defined as dW square minus dC square by dC square. So dW is the outermost diameter, dC is the diameter of the core cutting. If AR is less than 10%, then the sample disturbance is supposed to be small. If AR is high, say for example 30%, that is possible in case of the thick wall samplers, then we can say that particular soil sample is disturbed soil sample. And if you want least disturbed soil sample, then you should go for thin wall sampler, not the thick wall sampler. But for every kind of the soil, we cannot go for the thin wall sampler. So it also depends on the type of the soil mass. So depending upon the soil, we should go for thick wall or thin wall. So there are also guidelines about what should be the minimum clearance. So you can say the inside clearance should not be more than 1 to 3%. If it is above, then we should either discard the sampling, or you should state that that particular sample is a disturbed sample. So then a recovery ratio. So that is what is the length of the core and depth of the penetration. So it means depth of the penetration means advancement of the bore hole. And when you insert the sampler, so you have a definite length of that sampler. If you compare the advancement of the borehole depth with how much is the length of the soil core that has recovered, that is called as a recovery ratio. And this recovery ratio must be 96 to 98% for undisturbed soil sample. If not, then again it is stated as disturbed soil sample. So these are some specifications given by IS 2132 what should be the inside diameter, outside diameter, minimum effective length, area replacement ratio, so on and so forth. Okay, so I will stop it here only. So if you are wish to ask any question, you are most welcome. But I don't understand why